Welcome to our discussion on assessing risk. Okay, so let's look at an example. Is driving getting safer? Well, according to this data, right, the bars represent the number of deaths, number of total deaths, right? And they seem to be going down over the years. So that does seem um, to say that it's getting safer, especially when you look at the blue line, which is telling you that vehicle miles driven are going up because, there's more people on the road and so on and so forth. So we can conclude that over the 4-decade period, the death rate per 100 million miles dropped from 4.7 to 1.1, a decrease of about 75%. So in other words, driving became much safer over that period. Most researchers believe the improvements resulted from better design and safety features such as airbags and passive restraints like seatbelts and things like that. So it's not like people are getting better at driving. It's just the cars are safer. Now, assuming a U.S. population of 315 million, pretty close to what we are right now, find and interpret risks per person and per 100,000 people for accidents and suicide. So heart disease, right, 596, you can see that heart disease is actually the largest killer in the United States, and that's true even today. Cancer is second, and then everything else, is a long, long way off, right? Still bad, but these are the two biggies. Heart disease and cancer kill more people than anything else. In fact, they kill more people than I think basically all the others added together. In fact, I don't even have to think. You can see the numbers. They absolutely kill more than the rest all put together. But in any case, um, accidents, right? 122,800 divided by the total people, and you get 0.00039 deaths per person, or you would multiply that by 100,000 and you get 39 deaths per 100,000 people. That's why they report things like this, because if you told people that it was this many deaths per person, they'd be like, well, how can you have a percentage of a death per person? So they just say 39 deaths per 100,000, and then humans tend to understand those numbers a little bit better, right? And then we could do the same thing with suicide, and we get 12 deaths per 100,000, and so on and so forth. Okay, life expectancy is the number of additional years a person of a given age today can expect to live on average. And you can see that according to the trend lines over the years, starting in 1900 till 2010, life expectancy for both men and women have gone up drastically. Now, why do you suppose there was this huge dip between 1910 and 1920 where life expectancy went down? And for those of you that know your history, that there would be World War I, right? And so there was a huge drop in life expectancy. And what else do you notice about this? Women have always lived longer than men. It's just the way it is, right? They usually take care of themselves better. They usually have occupations that aren't as hazardous, right? There's a lot of reasons why. Okay, so using the figures shown, find the life expectancies of a 20-year-old person and a 60-year-old person. Are the numbers consistent? So this shows you how many years you have left at a certain age, right? So at age 10, you supposedly have, 70 years left. At age 50, you have, it looks like about 30 some odd years, right? So you just have to go from 20 and go up here, and it hits right about there, and you go, okay, I have about 60. And then at 60, I go up here, and it looks like I've got a little over 20, so 23. So it's funny that they don't equal the same because this isn't a perfectly straight line. But that's just the best, fit they got to the data they had. So it might seem strange that they don't both equal 80, but you have to remember that this is all based on current data. And if there were no changes in medicine or public health, a 60-year-old would have a greater probability of reaching age 83 than a 20-year-old simply because they've already made it to 60, right? There's a bunch of things that could happen between 20 and 60 that are no longer going to happen to the 60-year-old. Accidents, car accidents and things like that. Risky behavior that young people tend to do more than older people. That kind of stuff. Okay, will you live to be 110? Well, if we use that previous figure, Determine how much life expectancy rose during the 20th century. Suppose that life expectancy rise by the same amount during this century. What will life expectancies at birth be for children born in the year 2100? What are the implications to your own life expectancy? Well, this is going back to this figure here, right? And we can see that it went from about 45 for men to about 75, right? So about 30 years better. So that figure shows that the life expectancy at birth rose from about 48 in 1900 to 80 years in 2000. That's an increase of 32 for men, right? It went from about 46 to 74, an increase of 28. If the same increases occur in this century, then by 2010, life expectancy for women would be 32 years greater than the 80 years that it was, so that would be 112. And men would be 28 years greater than the 74, right? And that would be at 102. So in other words, if life expectancies continue to increase at that rate, life expectancy at birth will reach 112 for women and 102 for men. Now, this is all speculation, of course. Most likely life expectancy will not continue to rise at that same rate. I mean, think about all of the improvements in life that were made early on from 1900, just to the 1950s, all the huge advancements we made in medicine and nutrition and job safety, with the implementations of a shorter work week and OSHA regulations and all these things that we did. We made cars safer. We took lead and asbestos out of houses, all these things, all these carcinogens. So there were a lot of things that we were doing that was going to make life a lot, better, a lot safer. And then you can see it's starting to curl over, starting to taper off. This really isn't a straight line. It's starting to flatten out. So it really would be unrealistic to think that those numbers would actually happen. So, yes, those would be your life expectancies, but I wouldn't put money on it, is basically what we're saying here. And if it was, um, then, whew, talk about trying to come up with enough money to live to be 100 and 110, right? Okay, so that's everything we need to know on assessing risk.